My guest today is director Giulia Louise Steigerwalt, who made her acting debut in Gabriele Muccino's film But Forever in My Mind, continuing her career in other films and television series. Now, among her screenwriting credits are Husband and Wife, The Champion, An Almost Ordinary Family, and many others. But in 2019, she won the Nostro di Argento Award for Best Screenplay for The Champion and Cross and Delight. Now, her film September, her directorial debut, received several accolades, including the David D. Donatello Award for Best New Director. Now, Julia's newest feature film, Diva Futura, which will be known as Sex Diva in its American release as the new feature film about the rise and fall of Italy's first adult talent agency and the revolutionary family at its center, will release globally on November the 11th from Breaking Glass Pictures. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer-director Giulia Louise Steigerwalt to the show. Welcome, Giulia.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, I have to say, first, I want to congratulate you on bringing real cinema back to filmmaking. Everything about Diva Futura is spot on magnificent because when I saw this film, the first thing I was thinking, everyone needs to see this. If it's not for the story, it's for the filmmaking uh, about this film. But what moved you to do a film about the Italian erotica industry?
Oh, well, this is an interesting question. I've never been interested in, but even, when you're a teenager and like your friends are trying to sneak somewhere, and I was never interested. What really got my attention was like I first read the novel of Deborah Tamasio, which was the secretary of Riccardo Schicchi. And when I read this novel, it was everything except what I would expect from that world to be like. And I found it very warm. I saw like a really nice family, a big family, this group of people, and I saw like a piece of the Italian history in terms of like things that happened that today could be like pretty incredible, like a porn star elected to parliament, or like a lot of they were like part of the Italian everyday life. They were like on TV. They were like little, like they were stars. They were divas, and so that was fascinating. But then I got to know Deborah, the writer of the novel, and then she introduced me to all the characters that are still alive, like Eva, Riccardo Schicchi wife, and a lot of people who have worked with him, his children. And the more I got into this story, the more I realized how interesting it was to have a character so nice, so feminist, so kind to women. And there were a lot of themes that to me resonate today still. And it was interesting to see how who introduced porn for the first time in Italy then regretted that because what brought eventually was the opposite from what he had in his mind. He had no sense of shame, but he had absolute respect of women. And what all this eventually turned into was for him the opposite. He was like an ancient Greek with no sense of, nudity for him was like beautiful. And somehow pornography always existed in history. If we go back in ancient history, there was always a way to represent, sexuality. But nowadays, we associate sexuality to violence. And most of the porn is violent. And the viewer, which it's, the average age, it's really scary when young people start to watch porn. It's like 12 now, the average. And to think that what we're asking to the viewer is to associate violence to sexuality. It's really bad. And so to see that who first introduced this, when he saw all this, he regretted what he did, not because he, you know, he was regretting what he believed in, but because of what it was becoming.
Yeah, he
Again,
didn't realize that he had Ricardo didn't realize that he had created Pandora's box,
exactly.
and he didn't realize that when he created it and he opened it, he had no idea that it was going to become something that, like you said, that he completely regretted. And when I watched this film, I found it to be more of a complicated love story with the erotic film industry being the backdrop. Would that be a correct depiction of this film?
Well, the point is that what he believed for, like, that what he brought on his work, meaning like people should be free, people should be respected, like, then he really had the same, you know, way of thinking in his private life. So when his wife, who he deeply loved, decided to divorce from him, he respected that. But somehow, you know, he created like a big family. At the beginning, it was a bit more complicated with the new, you know, partner of his wife. But eventually, nowadays, this, like the new partner of his ex-wife, he tells me I miss him. At the beginning, we were, you know, fighting all the time, and now that he's not here anymore, then we were friends, and we found a way to work it out for the children. So it's a very nice story, also in terms of what family really means, what loving each other really means. You know, it's like caring about someone no matter what. You know, even if it's not your husband anymore, but still, like, you take care of him if he's like in difficulties or he's dying. And she was there till the end for him, even if they were not married anymore. He went to live with Eva for 2 years when he was in a wheelchair, and her new partner that then eventually became her husband. So it's a very nice story also in terms of love. And
Well,
that was fascinating as well for me. Like,
well, it was the thing. There's so many things that I love about this movie. The multiple storylines are incredible. But Ricardo, of course, he's really the center of this whole film. How did Italy view Ricardo?
this is Italy used to look at him as a vicious person because of what he, you know, was like, the world he would work in. Whoever met him in real life, and I interviewed like 100 people, they all said he was like that. Like, he was really kind. But I interviewed people, not only people that were working with him, even people that, you know, met him somehow or got to, you know, somehow they, you know, had to deal with him somehow. Like, they all said, and I also met people who like today are like, they do, you know, his lawyer, who today is the president of Series C of soccer in Italy. He wouldn't answer to anyone. And then when I wanted to interview him, and then I said it's for a movie on Riccardo Schicchi, he personally called me back right away. And he said, if it's for Riccardo, I'm always there. He was the nicest person ever. So I had all these feedbacks from girls who were saved by him, that were drug addicts, and he took them out of, you know, the drug world, and by making them work in porn industry, telling them that if you want to work, you have to be serious with work. It's a big paradox, but he was like a really good man. Somehow he would give money to people who were in need. He didn't keep anything for himself. In fact, he died that he didn't have much, even if he made a lot. So Italy had a big prejudice on him, but whoever really met him or knew him, they all told me that finally this movie, shows who he really was. And that's really nice. Of course, like the general public who would just see this guy who would produce porn looked at, but it's interesting because even when you watch his movies, they have something artistic. He made more than 300 wall paintings to make movies or take pictures, but they were like handmade, like painted. And Eva gave it to us. So we used a lot of these things to shoot the movie. A lot of things that you see in the movie are real things that he. So there was like an artistic and very, there he had an artistic intent. Like even if maybe he was a bit naive in what he was doing, but for sure he didn't have like bad intentions.
Well, yeah, because I found him to be very respectful to all of the women. I found him to be very kind. He was empathetic. The
Yeah,
total opposite of what you would expect for someone in that profession. But I also found that Ricardo was a hopeless romantic.
yeah, yeah, totally. And in fact, he died loving the woman that he loved his whole life. First, like he had a relationship for 18 years with Cicciolina, and he was in love with her. Then she left him, and then he met Eva, and that was, the woman of his life eventually. And you wouldn't expect even that from a man that worked in the porn industry. And Eva tells me he's the man who loved me the most, like in my life. And she still cries for him. She goes to visit him at the cemetery. If you look at all the people who somehow like were working with him, or like the children, I have a daughter who was adopted by him. She like talks about him like her dad, that she still misses so much. His son, the secretary, Deborah, she still cries when she talks about him. So it's when you meet so many people that are still so, they get moved so easily when they talk about him. It means it was a really nice person
So
doing
you,
porn.
yeah. So you had interviewed Cicciolina,
Yes, I
Ava.
know Cicciolina. She's the only one who I wasn't able to get in contact with.
Really?
Yeah,
And she is
but
still
Eva,
known worldwide.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. What they created at that time was so, it was like more of a revolutionary thing than just porn at the time. Like they came from, the free love message of the 70s. And it was late 70s. They were in their 20s. They wanted to break the rules. They wanted for Italy to get out from, the mentality of the 50s and the 60s that were like, it was still really close. And they wanted to do something that, just to break a lot of taboos.
Well, she had a stage show, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Many
know, I
stage
remember I
shows at
remember
the beginning.
here, I mean, she was so famous that even here in America, when she ran for parliament or whatever that government position was, I mean, the whole world was focused on
New.
that story. And of course,
Yeah.
you show some of that in the film, and you actually used real archived footage for some of that, correct?
Yeah, most of the footage is the original footage, and I made it to have the real, like our actors in the footage in a way that it seemed and it felt like real, because I wanted people to really realize how much they were part of the everyday TV shows or news, or like they were really part. Like when Cicciolina's snake died, It was on the front page of all the newspapers. I mean, this would never happen today. So somehow they really, um, they really changed something in society,
Well, that
good
was
or
one of the
bad.
things, yeah, because Julie, because
But
that was
and
one of the,
Cicciolina, for example, she got married to Jeff Koons, and she was part of, at some point, part of the international contemporary art movement. There were statues, pictures, paintings with her, very iconic ones, beautiful. So she was worldwide known, and
but you know what? You have a contrast in this film because you have Cicciolina, you have Moana Pozzi, and both were really kind of following the same path, but Moana was never taken serious because she was wanting to leave the industry. Cicciolina used
yes.
it to her advantage, but Moana got the opposite end. Why was that?
This is very interesting. Riccardo always said that Cicciolina was always herself. So when she was campaigning for like, she was like working on the campaign to get elected, she was just like driving on a car, throwing like confettis and candies, and like showing herself, like it was Cicciolina, the character, also saying, I want to go to parliament. Instead, Moana, somehow she wasn't happy about her image. She wanted people to know also that she was a very smart woman. She was well educated. She studied piano at conservatory, so she was like a pianist, and she wanted to change the way people would look at her. And she had no sense of shame, but she was very serious as a person. Everyone told me that whenever she would start to do something, she would do it really well. So she thought that, she had to be like a politician. And she changed her image, but people didn't buy it somehow, they were like, you are that, and that's all you can be. When Cicciolina was first elected to parliament, this was in the 80s, it was more like a revolutionary, thing.
Well, it
Instead,
was.
Moana wanted to be taken seriously and be mayor of Rome. She first ran for parliament and then as mayor of Rome. And society somehow didn't want that to happen, like wanted to keep things separate.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you show this so perfectly. And one of the things that I was amazed with the storyline is that you had Cicciolina, you had Moana, you had Ava, you had Deborah. Each character had their own storyline, but you seamlessly intertwined them with absolute perfection. How are you able to balance the multiple storylines as well as the timeline flashbacks? Because I thought they were perfectly done.
thank you so much. First of all, that was the most challenging thing. I had five amazing characters, and I wanted to, tell the story of each character. I wanted to, and there were even more characters in reality, but I had to focus on the main ones. And between the timeline, I loved the fact that in the second part of Riccardo Schicchi's life, it became more like a personal life, but he was still bringing all his, you know, his beliefs, like freedom, like to let a woman free, even if you loved her, in his personal life, all the things that he spent his life fighting for. And he was being very coherent, and instead of killing a woman because she leaves you and she doesn't want to be with you anymore, he was saying, I love you, and love means to let someone free to make their own decisions. And that was like, so somehow I tried to always keep in mind the theme of the movie in order to blend together the 5 characters and the 2 timelines. But it was really challenging for me, and I still don't know if, you know, maybe for some people it might work, maybe not. Like, it was like the most challenging part of the
No,
movie.
it worked.
Make an entire movie like feel like, coherent in one thing, but also tell emotionally all the roller coaster that each character went through. Um,
You
so
intertwined them perfectly, because here's what I noticed. Of course, Ricardo is connected to all of them, but you, if people watch closely, you really don't see Cicciolina, Moana, Ava. They don't really cross paths. The one that does is Deborah, because Deborah's
mm,
working there. And this was done so seamlessly. I was sitting there literally amazed, because I was like, where has this type of filmmaking gone? I mean, if it was me, I would nominate you for best director at the
thank
Academy
you.
Awards, because when I watch this film, my mind is going back to other films that used to use the same type of storytelling and this technique and the cinematography. And because there were so many things that literally blew me away. Now, you did, like you just said, you did use real archived footage of Cicciolina, but I noticed that you even used archived footage of the host side of the television interview with
Yeah.
Moana, but
Yes.
then you cropped it, but then it was actually actress Denise Capezza who's playing Moana. And oh my gosh, her acting is
Yeah,
just
she's
off the
amazing.
charts brilliant.
Yeah, if you listen to the real Moana, she's brilliant. Like, she was able to bring not only like her voice, her ways of talking, but also like, all her, heart, the emotional part together. And for someone who's not Italian, it's hard to understand, but she's from Naples, and she did an amazing job with the accent that is a mix between the accent from Genova, and Moana lived in her childhood in Brazil. So she had a weird Italian, like she had an Italian accent from Genova, but there was something from Brazil. And Denise studied that very carefully. But in the end, all together is very natural, and most of all, very emotional, which is the
Well,
main focus. Never lose, like,
when that
and
scene, yeah, but with the scene with Moana, when she was being interviewed on television, the look on her face, she felt degraded by the TV host.
yeah,
And like you said, she wanted to be known for something more than her films, because she really wanted to leave all that behind and show people that, that's not her anymore. And I mean, when you watch that scene, your heart breaks for her, because she's wanting
yeah,
to leave that behind. She's want to be taken seriously, not only as a woman, but as a professional in whatever uh, craft or whatever industry she wants to get into, and leave that past behind. But the look on her face, because of what the TV host said, it makes you just want to punch the guy in the face.
and that's a real interview, and she was heartbroken after that interview. That's all real footage. Like, the
Wait,
journalist is true.
that was really Moana?
So the interview with the guy that is like humiliating her, it's all true. We just put our actress inside the real footage, and
Right.
she did exactly what Moana did at the time. Moana was deeply hurt after that interview. And
Denise pulled it off.
yeah, I
Oh
guess
my
so.
gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to, I mean, I can almost remember every scene in this film, but that one, that scene really truly stands out because her performance was off the chart.
Yeah, I agree. She's a great actress. Yeah. But
So,
almost going back to what you were asking before,
uh-huh.
that about like the mixing of a lot of characters and the timelines. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it with with Moana, when I would hear the stories from them, there was a playful chaos that came out from the stories. So I also wanted for that to get in the movie, like this wonderful chaos, even in the way I would move the camera, and somehow the camera from the character becomes his point of view on things. And it was all because this family was very chaotic and messy in a nice way. So I guess there's also that to
Oh, well,
the
yeah, you
willing.
did. I mean, seriously, Julia, I mean, every element in my personal opinion, everything about this film was perfect. And one of my favorite characters was Deborah.
Oh,
She came across as very shy, but because I didn't know the story, and as I'm watching the film, me as an audience member, I was kind of hoping for Deborah and Ricardo that they would actually get together, but their relationship was completely professional, wasn't it?
oh, she nowadays she says that Riccardo Schicchi is the only boss that never harassed her. Like she said, when I was young, I changed a lot of jobs. I was always harassed somehow. Imagine in the 90s, in the 80s and the 90s. And instead, she said, the minute I stepped in Diva Futura, I thought this is going to be, hell for me. And instead, she was like, and when he found out, she told me that when he found out that once one producer was, you know, making jokes, like inappropriate jokes to her, he sent him away. Like he was really strict. He was not strict, he was fair to women. He was like very nice. And so that was like, and she said, it's the best boss I've ever had. Like, and he helped me finding then like to become a journalist. He gave her a lot of contacts and recommendations, and so she really still misses him as a person. And in the end they were like really good friends. They became like, but their relationship was always very professional. Yeah. it's
Yeah,
um, it's fascinating, like they were like dealing with naked people all day long, but it was in a professional way. And he would also protect all the women that were working for his agency. He would get furious when he would find out that someone was not being professional with the women that were working there, and he would send them away always. They told me once he grabbed a guy and threw him out
what
of the door.
one of the things that I loved about this film is that you didn't show us any sex scenes except for that one area where Eva had gone into. But you use the camera to tell the story in a way in which the audience knows what's going on without having to show them everything. When I saw that, it is the element of filmmaking that is missing today. Now, they want to tell the whole story, they want to show everything. There's no imagination for the audience. But you brought this element back, and it was an element that I'd seen in films from the 1940s, the 1950s, and it made this film so much better to watch. Why did you want to be somewhat subtle in the areas of the sex scenes, but still allow the audience to know what is happening?
First of all, because I think that imagination is always way more powerful than seeing like, and then the actual, scene, but then also because in this specific story, that wasn't the point for me. Like, as a director, I wasn't interested in showing like the porn scenes, which
You
you
didn't need the
understand
shock
that
value.
are
You didn't
happening
need, yeah, you didn't
in
need
the
the shock
studio, in
value at
his
all.
studio. They would shoot scenes, but the point was like how that was happening, because the how is everything, like how you treat people, how. And so it's the way this big family was came together. They would shoot a scene, then had dinner together, then keep shooting, then they were, if someone wanted to stop, like, they were all very respectful to each other, they knew each other. He would let the girls and the women choose the actors to work with, always. He would never allow like an actor to do anything like, and the girls were choosing the actors. It was a world where women were at the center. They would also, earn 10 times a man. So it was all the opposite, a paradoxic
Well, yeah.
way. But
And
still,
so,
like, it was, yeah, yeah. But it wasn't. I wasn't interested in the porn. Like, if someone is interested in the porn, like, there are many ways to watch a porn. But it
well,
was
yeah,
more like
you told a
the heart
story,
behind all this.
but you told the story the right way. You didn't bring, no shock value to the table, which was great because I just loved watching the storylines of each character. I had to go back because I also noticed I don't think I heard one word of profanity in this film. The dialogue was pure. Was there a reason for that?
He didn't like bad words. So he wouldn't allowed at the beginning. I don't know if you hear him. He's like, I already said it. No smoking, no drugs, no bad words, and no prostitution. He was he had his rules. And he okay, when he would talk about women breast, he would say in Italian, seni, which is a very um, elegant way that you would use to describe a statue. It He wouldn't use like the equivalent of, like, I don't know, like boobs. He would use a very elegant way to call, you know. So he was really like that. He was always in a very elegant, like with a jacket, like a nice jacket and pants. They were like maybe old because he didn't buy many. He would invest all the money in the shows and making new paintings, but he was always really, and he was very well educated, and he didn't like people who would, use bad words. So
Yeah,
it's funny.
I don't think I heard one bad word in the whole film.
Yeah, but he was actually, well, you hear them when Eva ends up doing porn in Hungary with
Yeah, yeah,
people
I think it
very,
was
and
only
it
like
was shocking for her. It was shocking for her.
yeah,
She
but it's
was
like
like,
once or twice I think in the whole
yeah, yeah,
film,
yeah.
but I
But
noticed it.
that's, yeah. Well, people, this is what people, like, the movie at some point was a bit criticized because they thought it was, the character of Riccardo Schicchi was too kind and too nice. The problem is, my problem is that all the, testimonies that I got, they all agree, in describing him like that. And even the wife, the children, like, everyone tells me he was like that. Like, the secretary was like, he would say "Sydney," like, to say like the breast, like, he was very nice to people. So problem is he was really like that, but it's so unexpected in that world that some people find it hard to believe that it was actually like that, so it's a
You know,
funny.
you portrayed the truth. You portrayed him like he really was.
Every episode in the movie, it's real. There's nothing that I invented.
Well,
And
what
I don't
did
want to take away credit for my, but I really like every single thing, even his habits. The fact that he would do like that, like a cat and scratch, and if he was scared or he was attacked or everything, it's part of, you know, all the stories that I've been told.
well what has, let's say, Ava or Deborah and others, when they have seen the film, what did they think?
They loved it. They cried a lot. They cried a lot. And Riccardo Schicchi's children, they said it, and it also Eva, they said when we were watching him, sometimes we could see dad, and it was really touching because Pietro Castellitto, the actor that plays Riccardo Schicchi, he studied all the movies, all the footage, all the interviews of Riccardo, and he moves like him. He talks like him in a very nice way. He has that, you know, dreaming gaze. Sometimes it gets lost in the air. He was like a kid that wanted to play. He actually would buy little water guns and play in the studio, in the office with water guns. He loved to make jokes, like to trick people and make jokes. I didn't have enough time to put everything in, but he was like a very, like he had a little child inside himself, still very alive. Let's say that.
His performance was literally off the chart brilliant. I loved watching him act.
Yeah, me too. I love him. I was surprised. I knew he was a good actor. He surprised me even more,
Well,
Pietro.
you have a large cast. What was the casting process like, especially when nudity was required by the actresses?
So the the casting process was quite complicated. Not for Riccardo and Deborah because I worked previously with Barbara Ronchi in my first feature film. She actually won the David as Best Actress, Best Lead Actress for my movie, and I knew she was perfect for the character. I know we worked really well together, so I didn't have doubts about her. Riccardo, I knew Pietro was the right actor, and even he looked a little bit like Riccardo, like, but I knew he was talented to play that part, and also to play like an older man as he ages. He's 32, but he is really mature. He can bring on screen also like an older character, which is not, you know, it's not common for young actors. But the divas, those were more challenging because I really had to tell them how nudity had to be part of the movie because for them it was the most normal thing to be naked. Like they, but on the other hand, for me, I wasn't watching that. It was kind of part of the everyday life, but I wasn't interested in showing, you know, that piece of body. I really wasn't interested in that, but I didn't want to make a fake movie about that world. Because whenever you watch a picture, footage, or whatever about that time, it could happen. Even during, you know, the political campaign, that they would get naked. So it had to be like normal, and it was also something that I questioned myself a lot on how I would portray that nudity in the movie. And I'm someone who usually I don't like nudity in movies when it's not natural. You know, when it's forced. I don't like it at all. Like it's something that I think 99% of movies don't need nudity. so,
No,
so
you're absolutely correct. I mean,
like,
we don't need to see nudity in film because most of the time it has nothing to do with the storyline.
yeah, yeah.
And of course it does in this particular film, but you did it right. And what I loved about all of the main characters, every character in this film owned the silver screen on their own, and you don't see that too often in today's film. It's almost like you had five major stars in one film, with each one having their own storyline, with
Mm-hmm.
barely the intertwining, which was only really Ricardo and Deborah. But oh my gosh, this film is so good. One of the things
I'm
that
so
caught me
happy.
by
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that caught me by surprise was, why were some film festivals putting in the category of comedy? I didn't understand that.
I don't know that actually. Actually, for me, it was more of a drama with
It was.
some
It is.
ironic parts. But yeah, I was also a bit surprised about that. But
Yeah, no, this is a full-blown drama. And also, too, how did you achieve the look of the 1980s and into the 1990s? I almost thought you had filmed this in 35 millimeter.
no, I wished I could, but no. I mean, I guess at some point that's the dream of every director, right? Too. But we worked a lot with the DP, Vladan Radovic, um, to give. We got all like most of the footage from that time, even like their studio, the things that it was. We tried to bring those colors back on the movie screen, and then we tried to differentiate a little bit the past from the most recent part of the story, like the recent part of the story that was more in the 2000 something, like from 2000 to 2012 when he died. But we used a lot of things that were in the, as I told you before, in their office. A lot of costumes. Most of Cicciolina's costumes are the original ones. And she had the perfect, like they had the same size. So she fitted into those perfectly. So it was, I don't know, we tried to, recreate that atmosphere also with, makeup and hair style. But I'm glad you find that it works.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the things, one of my favorite things, besides all the acting and the storylines, the cinematography is incredible. And that's not even a good enough word to explain it. But Vladan Radovic's camera work is stunning. Were there films in which you have seen that you wanted not only just the look, but you wanted the movements for the characters? How did you explain it to Vladan?
How to move the camera.
His camera movements enhance the actors' performances.
I I I I had a storyboard that I made myself. I drew it and I had it every day on set. And I, for each single shot, I would tell him exactly like what. Like sometimes I knew that I planned it all basically, and I wanted to be with them and be part of all this chaos, but also their emotional part. So sometimes I decided to not move the camera at all, like on Eva when she is in the TV show and suddenly, she talks about her horrible experience. Or sometimes just from the character, I loved to go from the character to their point of view and get on what they're looking at. But it was all like from, from my gut, I guess. But I imagined it, and I had this storyboard that helped me a lot to communicate with the DP. And we were there. I was a lot with them on set, telling them exactly what, I filmed it all with a Steadicam. Like my previous movie was all just camera, like the one that you hold on your shoulder, but it was pretty still, like very simple, very, because I like that movie to be portrayed like that. And said this movie, I knew I wanted to get inside with them. And so I asked them if we could use a Steadicam for the whole movie. And but I didn't want it to be too confusing for the viewer also. I
No,
wanted just
no, not
so
at
I
all.
would
I
move
mean,
it when it was part of the heart of the scene.
okay, you know the scene where Ricardo is laying in the hospital bed? He's older.
Yeah.
The camera is focused so close. You only see the one eye because the other side of the shot is being blocked by uh, Eva's
My
new
little tube.
husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
so that because that shot, I mean, it pulls the audience in, and we're like leaning forward, wanting to make sure that we hear every word Ricardo is saying. And then the shot turns to the other guy, and I'm just looking at these shots, and I'm like, wow. But then that other shot where Ava is she arrives to the warehouse. She's standing outside the red door. She just stands there, and then that camera just sweeps around her. I mean, every shot in this film, I mean, I couldn't even think of a film that it reminded me of because it just brought me back to seeing films, you know, back in the almost back to the 60s or the 70s. But you told a perfect story. Oh my gosh. There is not one area of this film that anyone should even be able to criticize because this film is that good.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
But
I'm only like people think that because it takes place in the porn world, it's you know, like a porn movie. Instead, what I would like for people to know is that it's all about the heart of people that lived, this story. And porn is not really, the point, like you were saying before.
it's the backdrop of the
It's the
story.
backdrop, yeah. But then
And
it's also criticized, in a certain way. Like it tells, you can do things in a way or in another way. Why do we need to do it this way?
but it showed too how dark it got. And then and even Ricardo knew times had changed
And he
because
didn't want
the
for his wife to do porn. He was
yeah,
against.
and
He tried,
the DVDs went
yeah,
away. The
yeah.
internet came into view and everything changed. And but you show these changes in a subtle way, just enough to we know that there is a cultural change. We know that there is a mentality change because there was that one scene with Ricardo and the other two gentlemen trying to convince him to go to the dark side, and he's like, no. I mean, to the very end, Ricardo never wanted to change, and not go there. And I mean,
But others did. And he was
others
just like,
did.
why? Why should we treat women like this? Should we get into someone's head and tell them that sex, like that you can,
Like this
have
is
that experience
normal.
by abusing in a very bad way a woman. Like he was like, why? Like it's always about consent, and so he was. I think there are many themes that are very contemporary.
Oh, very much so. Now tell me something. I understand. Well, you mentioned this earlier, but tell me the story behind all the illustrations that were on the wall in Ricardo's office in the film. They're hand drawn, aren't they?
So he would have these painters paint these really big like they were like back
They were murals.
paintings, murals that but they were like on a canvas, and he had like 300. We opened them all. We chose some of those, and we were able to reproduce the same shot for movies that he made with the real, you know, backdrop that was painted, and the real one with our actresses with the real costumes that they would use at the time. So all the pictures in his studio are made by us, but using the real, everything that they had with our actresses inside. Or sometimes we would just use it in some scenes, like when you see the scene of them shooting a movie in the office. There's like it looks like a city, and that was like one of their, I would call them paintings because they're like, and they still have so many. And Eva, she just said, take whatever you want to make the movie. Yeah. So
Wow. So for you, what do you hope audiences will take away from seeing this film?
uh, first of all, I would like audience to question what porn is doing to our society nowadays, because no one wants to talk about it. But a lot of people watch porn, and somehow it's a silent, sentimental, sexual education that is happening. And because 98% of porn is violent, it's happening in a very wrong way, especially with, young adults, men who are like forming their, sometimes it's the first approach that young adults have to sexuality is a violent porn movie. And, Riccardo Schicchi was there to say, why should we make it violent? Like pornography has always existed since ancient times. And then the other thing that I would like the audience to, like thinking about, to not judge something, but to see first people what they are really, how do they behave to each other, what it really means to be part of a family where everyone cares and love each other, and what is really love. Love is also like the capability of, you know let someone free to make their own choices, even if that is not what you want. And so I think that these were all the things that really wanted me to tell this story, that it was very romantic. It's a romantic story, but it's also a story about freedom, about imagining something and creating that something that doesn't exist. And he created a world that didn't exist before. And somehow he was an artist. You could be not agree with him. A lot of people might not agree with him, and I can see that. But he didn't mean to hurt anyone, let's say that. Not the way that other people are doing, did after him. So it's very interesting, and maybe to look at watch the movie with an open mind.
Yeah, this is one of the best cinematic films I have seen this year. And
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, you know, in Europe this film is known as Diva Futura. Here in America, it's going to be released and be known as Sex Diva, which is going to be the title for the American release, but it's about Italian Riccardo's Schicchi's agency Diva Futura, which turns free love into porn, but making stars of Cicciolina, Moana Pozzi, and others. But their fame leads to Cicciolina's election and Pozzi's mayoral run. But the film dives deep into the studio that redefined notions of celebrity in Italy, spotlighting the unlikely blend of sexuality, politics, and cultural change that emerged from the Diva Futura studio in the 1980s and the 1990s. Now, Julia Louise Steigerwalt's directing is one of absolute brilliance. The intertwining of the multiple storylines keeps the audience's eyes glued to the silver screen. The cast is absolute perfection, with each actor perfect for their role. Now, the audience will hang on every single scene because the acting is truly authentic. It's emotional and it draws you in like true cinema should do. One of the things I kept noticing was how incredible the cinematography was in this film. Now, while the acting was perfect, so too was the camera movements, which enhances the actors' parts. And I don't mean body parts, but their acting parts. I could watch this film just for the cinematography, as Vladan Radovich's camera work is simply stunning. If you want to know how to tell a story with a camera, this is the film to see. And Julia, I want to thank you so much for sharing this absolute magnificent film with me today.
Thank you for all this. I truly appreciate your
And this,
words. And
you're very welcome. And this film will have its global release on November the 11th.
yes, yes,
And you are doing theatrical release?
it was already in Italy. It already had the theatrical release. It was first at the Venice Film Festival in the official competition in 2024. Yeah, and it
Oh.
was in competition. Yes, at the Venice Film Festival, and then it came out in Italy in January. No,
Okay, so
February. Sorry,
okay,
February.
so November 11th will be the streaming release.
Yes, but also like in the States, it's coming out theatrical release in the States.
Well, this is a film to see on the big screen. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the theatrical release here in America, you've got to see this incredible film. I mean, and if you're a filmmaker, you need to watch this film just to gain even more experience on how to make a film the right way. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and yes, you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.